Ella of Elondor. Season 1 Episode 1. In a kingdom called Elondor far away in the east, lived two wise and kind rulers, King Sebastian and Queen Isabel. Their kingdom was one of the happiest as it pours in everything, but behind every happiness there is sadness, for the king and queen could not conceive a child. They tried every doctor but with no results. But one day, as if it was destined to happen, the king heard of a golden well that runs a magical water that whoever drinks it can make a wish and it shall come through. The king as a last resort prepared his men and took off on a journey to find the golden well. They traveled for weeks passing through the jungle and big forest until they came upon the location they were told. They looked and looked but could not find the well, but the king was not going to give up and continued to look but they could not find it. As the sun started to set, the king and his men prepared camps and fire because they had given up, but as if luck was on their side, the light from the sun shined through a temple and a door started to glow. The king and his men prepared themselves and walked towards the door. They all walked in, and sitting in the middle of the room was a golden well. But suddenly monsters came out of the dark corners of the room and started to attack the king and his men. The king and his men started to defend themselves using their swords. The king knew that they were outnumbered because the monsters kept coming from the dark corners of the room. The king then ran towards the well and collected some of the waters. The king then used his swords and broke the well, making all the water fall onto the ground. All the monsters started to groan in pain, and the king and his men used the opportunity to run out of the temple, but the temple started to fall. Some of the large stones started to fall onto the kingmen and the monsters. The king and his remaining men ran out of the temple and jumped onto their horse as the temple completely fell onto the ground. When the king returned to his kingdom, he ran and gave his wife the queen the water to drink and let her make a wish. 9 months passed as the queen gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. The king and queen fell in love with her on their first sight. As she was born to bring good fortune to our kingdom, we will give her the name Princess Ella of Elondor, said the king as he smiled at the queen. As time passed, the king and queen would love and care for Ella as if she was a treasure, but as we said in the beginning of this story, behind every happiness there is sadness. On Ella's first birthday, as the night was dark, the king and queen was sleeping. Suddenly the queen got up screaming as the guards ran in to see what was happening, but to their shock there was a huge monster standing in the room with the king in its hand unconscious. The monster then ran and broke through the castle wall and ran into the forest as the guards chased after it, but to their disappointment the monster disappeared into the dark forest, never to be seen again. The queen spent months searching for the king but to no avail. When all hope was given up, the king was announced dead. This made the queen to always be sad and always in tears. That one day she made a decision that her daughter will train with the finest trainer the kingdom has to offer in the field of weaponry, for the queen feared that if something is to happen, Ella could always defend herself. Ella would train day after day with all different types of weapons. As Ella reached 13, she was known to be very beautiful and kind to everyone. But one day Ella found out her mother has fallen in love and has decided to get married. Are you happy that I will get married? The queen: once you are happy, mother, I am happy, said Ella. Thank you, my daughter, plus you would be having a sister to talk to, said the queen as she hugged Ella. As the wedding ceremony was finished, the queen walked up and introduced Ella's stepfather. Ella, I would like you to meet your father Frederick, said the queen. Nice to meet you, said Ella as she shaked Frederick's hand with a smile. Meet your stepsister Anastasia. It's not nice to meet you, my princess, said Anastasia as she bowed in front of Ella. You don't have to do that, said Ella as she hugged Anastasia. Years passed as Ella's 18th birthday has reached. Ella got up feeling excited. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. Come in, said Ella. Good morning. Happy birthday, said Ella's best friend Jerome. Thank you so much as she hugged him. You know, we have been best friends for a long time now and I want you to have this, said Jerome as he took out a bracelet and put it on Ella's hand. Thank you so much, said Ella as she hugged Jerome with a smile. Have you mother wished you happy birthday as yet, said Jerome. Yes, she got up 12 o'clock this morning and wished me a happy birthday. She always do this every year. She always want to be the first, said Ella as she laughed. So what do you want to do now, said Jerome. I always wanted to visit the market square and get some of that nice cookies from my favorite shop, said Ella. Okay, but first we need a disguise, said Jerome as he tied a cloth around Ella's head and gives her some old cloths. As Jerome and Ella escaped and went to the market square, she was intrigued to see everyone working and doing things that she was never allowed to do. She was happy to feel the warm air and the smell all around her that it made her smile. I'm going to get you some cookies, stay right here, I will be right back, said Jerome. As Jerome disappeared into the shop and Ella was about to turn around, she hit someone carrying some books. I am so sorry, I should watch where I'm going, said Ella as she bent down and helped pick up the books. It's okay, said the person as he and Ella made eye contact with each other. Ella was shocked to see a handsome boy in front of her. I am Eric. Nice to meet you, Eric. I am Ella. Nice to meet you, said Eric. Why are you standing here alone? Eric, I am not alone. Here he is. Eric, this is Jerome, my best friend, and Jerome, this is Eric. Nice to meet you, said Jerome as he put his hand out and shaked Eric's hands. Nice to meet you too, said Eric as he smiled at Jerome. Well, it's time for us to go, said Jerome. Goodbye, said Eric. Goodbye, said Ella as she and Jerome walked away. He is so cute, Ella said. Really, said Jerome as he started to laugh. As the night came and Ella's birthday was about to be over, Ella started to hear a whisper calling her name. She thought that the whisper was coming from the door, but when she opened the door there was no one. "Whoever it is, this is not funny," shouted Ella. Suddenly she heard the whisper and a banging at her door. She then armed herself with a candle stand and walked towards the door and opened it, but there was no one. Suddenly dust started to fall onto her and she started to feel dizzy and fainted. When Ella got up she was in front of the door of the forbidden room in the palace. "What happened, and what am I doing here?" she said to herself. Suddenly the door started to glow and then opened by itself. Ella then stepped in, and as she walked in there was nothing but a dark room, and the door behind her closed and disappeared. "Hello, is there anyone in here?" said Ella in fear. "Noon but me," said someone as they walked out of the darkness, and suddenly there were candles around the room that lit itself. As Ella looked up she could see an old woman walking towards her. "Who are you?" said Ella. "I am your fairy godmother, and dear you, me, and everyone is in great danger." "How?" said Ella. "You have a lot to learn," said fairy godmother.